best driver inside the team to get the maximum points. At the same time, looking at the FIA rules, is actually forbidden to do these kind of maneuvers, and unfortunately, it was a little bit too obvious that this maneuver was in favor of Fernando Alonso. So I'm expecting that the FIA is going to have a statement from Ferrari, or actually they will talk with the Ferrari people, because they will ask to have some explanation about that.
But Ferrari didn't need to do this. They had the same result. They had a 1-2 whichever way they went about it.
I know, but you know better than me that sometimes when you have a contract signed for the future, you need to keep your position, you keep your seat, or basically continue your career. And what happened today probably is giving the possibility to Felipe maybe to retain his seat for the future, and giving the better position for Fernando for the race.
Ivan, as always, top man. Thank you for that. Difficult for you in Italian, because we know what the blood runs through your veins. Everyone wants Ferrari to win. It's a great shame on this race that we saw this kind of thing happen, which is clearly a breach of the rules. Yeah. Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome.
Oh, Eddie, that was verging on the professional.
Are you suggesting that I would be any other than being professional? What's Luca going to say to me today?
Well, let's find out. We're joined by Luca Colliani from the Ferrari press office. Luca, thank you very much for coming out and speaking to us. I'm sure that by now the thoughts of Eddie Jordan have filtered through to Ferrari headquarters. Give us your current position on the situation that we're in.
The position is that we have to be more than happy that we did 1-2, first of all.
Absolutely.
Because 2 weeks ago we were here talking about the first zero of the race, of the season, and today we are here having done 43 points. So first of all, I think it's worth to say that performance-wise we have done a great job. The start was great from both drivers. And then what happened, I think it's part of the race. I don't think anything wrong has been done. I don't think any breach of the regulation has been done. I don't think there is any element which could say that. We've seen drivers in other occasions doing mistakes. I think our drivers proved today to have the good of the team as a first priority and not their own one. I don't think we don't have to forget Formula One is a team sport. So the team has to have to maximize the result, and this is what we have done.
Luca, firstly, if I may just take the response, I want to add my congratulations.
Sorry.
I would like to add my congratulations. I think 1-2 from where you were last race at Silverstone is remarkable. It's just such a pity that most people, whether they're the emails or the other television people, are calling to question the way it happened. It was just a little bit unnecessary, because you still finished 1 and 2.
What was unnecessary?
It was unnecessary for Rob Smedley to have to tell his driver that you were slower than them, and the clear overtaking move.
The evaluation of the pit wall is that Fernando was slightly quicker than Felipe, especially on hard tires. I've just come back from the press conference, and Felipe was talking about the fact that on soft tires he was very, very quick, and he felt very comfortable, and then on the hard tires he was struggling a bit. So this is the reason why Fernando was quicker. So that was the situation, the picture at that part of the race, and that was the right thing to do for the good of the team.
Luca, when we hear what Rob Smedley said to his driver, and then a few corners later, Felipe slows down, Fernando makes his way past, surely you can understand why people at home, and I've got a number of emails already, believe that it was Ferrari altering the outcome of the race, because, as you've said, it was the best decision for you. It's not like the driver overtook and then it was a worse decision for Ferrari. What happened resulted in a better result for Ferrari. So can you understand why people think it's
I can understand, but you have to understand that behind Fernando, for instance, there was Vettel, who was going very, very fast, and if Felipe maybe would have struggled more, then Vettel could have joined Fernando, and then could have been a danger for the team.
That's not a reason to let someone pass someone else.
I mean, we have to think, when you are at the pit wall, and these two gentlemen can confirm, you have to think about all the potential scenarios. So what was the situation is that if Fernando was a bit quicker, and Vettel could have joined them, closed the gap to them, and maybe in the last 10 laps of the race, we could have been in trouble. So we wanted to be sure that we could have managed the margin over the third car.
So you let Fernando past, Felipe?
No, we didn't let Fernando pass. It was a driver decision. We just, as usual, we informed the drivers about what is the situation. We didn't say at all, we didn't give any instruction at all to what they have to do. It was his own decision. Full stop.
Look, do you think that we're in this situation having the conversation because of the rule that was brought in 2002? You know, what I've been trying to put across is that the rule doesn't really fit in modern Formula One because of the fact it is a team sport, as you said. Has it ever been discussed between the teams to try and lobby the FIA
but
to...
it's not a question that you have to ask me.
You're a team member.
Question, yeah, but it's a question you should ask to the one who does the rule.
Yes, but you didn't let me finish. Have you ever been in a situation where the teams have discussed lobbying the FIA to try and adapt this rule in the same way that constantly the rules are adapted year on year?
Dave, you were there that day in Seltweg 8 years ago when something happened involving our two drivers, and after that race, you remember all the fuss, it was decided that the rules must be changed. They changed it for the year after, and we have to live with the rules, even though maybe the rules are not the one we like more, and that's a matter of fact. There are a lot of things we don't like, and we have to live with.
Are you expecting an FIA investigation?
So at the moment, it's not up to me to say.
Can you see there might be a situation where the FIA jump to the same conclusions that other people have, and they want to at least speak to Ferrari?
Well, maybe they want to speak with Ferrari, which is quite understandable, but honestly, I was in the press room, so I didn't know what were the last events on this side.
Okay, well, the result at the moment is 1-2 finish for Ferrari, a great result for your championship, and also, let's point out, a great result for Felipe a year after his accident.
I think Felipe did a fantastic race, a fantastic start. He proved to the people who maybe were casting some doubts on him that he's a driver who can win races in front of everyone in this field. And Fernando did a great job as well, because he did also a good start. He didn't pass Felipe because he was fighting with Vettel, so he had nothing to do against Felipe. So I think we did a great job, and I think that the result will remain the same.
Okay, one final question.
Yes.
Was it in Fernando's contract? Does he need to be the #1 man?
No, it has never been in any contracts in the team, as far as I'm in the team, since more than 10 years, that there is a #1 in the team. The #1 is determined by the results and the points in the classification.
Great, that's what the fans want to hear. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Thanks
Luca.
for coming on.
Very good. Good of Luca to join us, actually. Okay, we'll be speaking to Martin Brundle very shortly, and anybody else who fancies joining us. Lots more to talk about than just Ferrari, so let's relive the highlights of the 2010 German Grand Prix. Having a nice chat here. We've made our way into the energy station, a little slightly different venue. We were outside in the paddock a moment ago, and we've decided to sit down and welcome Martin Brundle to the fray. Martin, all very tasty stuff, this, isn't it?
Juicy, isn't it?
Yeah.
I think Ferrari handled this so badly. I think they're underestimating people's intellect there. I think they did the right thing for the team. It didn't. I mean, I think we flagged it up from lap 1 in commentary that the wrong Ferrari was in front in terms of the World Championship. But did they handle it badly? And the terminology, David's absolutely right. You shouldn't allow the engineer who's got that emotional attachment. They're living it together. They're like a husband and wife team, a driver and his engineer, in terms of the relationship they have. And you've got to break that. And the message was delivered with a half punch, and it was, and I'm sorry, and the words don't add up. Now they're having to sort of hit reverse gear, try and unravel that. I don't think they're handling the aftermath. Up in the press office, they're asking Fernando Alonso, was this a win like you had when at Renault,
really?
When Piquet crashed out in tension? They're giving him a right hiding in the press office at the moment. So I don't know what else the team could have done. I think they had to do that. It's the only chance they've got with 8 races remaining now of a Ferrari driver winning the world title. They just did it in the most crass way.
Well, let's join Ted Kravitz, actually, because he was in that press conference, I believe, and we can join him now live downstairs. You can see behind him, that's what we call the pen. That's where all the interviews happen with the drivers after the race. The atmosphere in that press conference and up in the media room, what was it like, Ted?
It was highly charged, it was angry, it was hostile. Fernando Alonso sat there looking the most miserable I've ever seen a Grand Prix driver looking there. Felipe Massa looked miserable. The press were absolutely laying into Alonso and Massa, and I'll tell you what they said in a moment. So much so that Sebastian Vettel in the middle of it said, "Guys, can I go? Are you done with me?" And in fact, they were. There were no more questions to Vettel. So just a few of the things, the vitriol that was going to Fernando Alonso. Somebody asked him, do you consider this a dirty win? And if you win the championship, will it be a dirty championship? Fernando, don't you think that since you couldn't beat Felipe on track, you had to get the team to help you beat him? To which Fernando said, well, that's just your opinion. And what's more, why can't you be honest with us and say that the win was handed to you on a plate? And now Fernando's reply to that was quite interesting. He said, well, you obviously weren't following what was happening in the rest of the weekend. Did you not see on Friday when I was quickest in Friday practice 2? Did you not see in qualifying when I was just 0.02 of a second behind Sebastian Vettel, who was on pole? I have been quick, in brackets, which he didn't say, quicker than Felipe Massa, close brackets, all weekend. And so you could see how I was quick. That's Fernando's justification for that, and I'm sure that will be Fernando's line. Matt, you can just see him when we hear his interview with Lee in a moment. But just a couple of key other things that I need to tell you while you're down here. First of all, Felipe said, yes, it was my decision to let Fernando pass. It was definitely my decision to let Fernando pass. And when Felipe was asked, do you feel like you're a number 2 in the driver? He said, well, I can't say that I'm the team's focus for the championship now. So I think Felipe acknowledges that his championship challenge, as long as Fernando Alonso is still kicking and screaming in the other Ferrari, Felipe's championship challenge has probably ended. And just a final thought from down here. It's the 25th on my nice digital watch. It's the 25th of July today, isn't it? We're a year, aren't we? A year to the day, or a minus and plus 1 day since Felipe Massa's accident. And I think much of the feeling, his accident in Hungary last year, from which he was lucky to escape with his life. And I think much of the feeling in the media centre was really that it would have been such a lovely way for Felipe to have commemorated that anniversary coming back with a win. I think that was much of the bad feeling towards Ferrari, but it got very nasty in that, and that's going to be all over the papers in the morning.
It certainly will, and it's very much added to it. OK, Ted, thank you very much. If anything else crops up, let us know, won't you?
Yep, will do.
OK, thanks. You talked about Ferrari dealing with this badly, Martin. Would it not be sensible if teams want to give team orders, but they don't want to have this kind of scrutiny and this kind of trouble? Why not have a code to your driver, G8 isn't working. He then knows to go a bit long into the hairpin, make a mistake. His teammate comes by. Why did it have to be delivered to him in a way that, even on the message, it was so clear, it felt so clear, didn't it?
Yeah, that was my point, really, that it was so badly handled.
At the time.
Some teams do have a code for that, and sometimes drivers work it out for themselves. They genuinely do, and make the changes, not very often. And I think, as David said earlier on, I mean, the last time it happened, I believe, was 1957, where a driver actually gave over his car, lost the chance to win a world championship so that Fangio could take his 4th or 5th at the time. It is inherent in the sport. It is, Ferrari team, desperate to win a title. They spend hundreds of millions of pounds per year. They've got to do the right thing for the team. But let's not do it like that and then go, hey, what do you mean? Why are you asking us these questions? That outrageous sort of reaction to the fans and the media's reaction to what they did.
Yeah, but just to add on that, and picking up on your point, having a coded message to do the same thing, does that make it any less bad?
No, but the Ferrari's reaction is that they almost can't believe that these questions are being asked.
Basically what Ferrari's position is that they haven't given a direct instruction. And is that factually correct in the words that they delivered over the radio, which is the only way we're open to knowing how they got that information? That's correct. He was the information he gave him was Fernando is faster. Now, we know that means move over at the next available moment, but could they defend the words in a court of law? Of course they can. The real crux of the problem here is, as much as I hated having team orders when I was in a team, it's ludicrous to think they don't exist. And even with the rules being changed in 2002, it's unworkable. Now, when they couldn't police traction control in Formula One, they allowed it back in. And then when they decided they needed to get rid of it again, the only way of policing it was to have a single electronic box that's used by every team. So there needs to be something that can be
but why
policed.
does it have to exist? If you just say it's not going to happen, then teams could almost... The chip in their head that says, oh, it'd be great to let him pass, that's gone. The chip's gone. The thought is gone.
Yeah, but as Martin said, the teams spend hundreds of millions to win the trophy. That's one driver who wins that trophy, the World Championship trophy, not two. So 2 and 1 doesn't go. It's as simple as that.
But look, lads, honestly, we're going off in tangents, talking about money in a programme which is actually unlawful. I want to just touch on the subject. You brought it up, and you talked about court of law, the words that you said... You think it stand up? I'm sorry. Any court of law that I've been involved in or ever read about or whatever situation, the judge takes the interpretation as to what was meant. If what I saw of any of the Ferrari people, of any of the communications that they've given us, including Rob Smedley's on pit to car radio communication, they, in my view, would be slaughtered. There isn't a judge or a barrister that would want to defend them because it's indefensible.
Eddie, back in the 90s, Spa, you're 1-2 in the rain. You stopped Ralf Schumacher coming at... He was much quicker than Damon. Damon won the race. You interjected for the good of the team.
But it was not unlawful to do so. This is unlawful. The rule is clear. Please, let's not get away from it. This rule, which says there will be no team orders, is no different to say that the wing is so many centimetres high. It's exactly the same situation. Please don't mix up apples and oranges just because you might feel that way. I know David does. The facts are that there is a law. Why? Who gives you the right to break the law? That's it.
Absolutely. Don't disagree. What I'm saying is the rule doesn't fit the sport today. I'm not arguing about what happened out on track. The rule is very clear. Was it a team order? Yes.
But the teams
The question I'm putting forward is I'm trying to move on from that is, does that rule have any place in modern Formula One?
But it's unworkable.
It's unworkable.
It's
so
unworkable.
you can't have it then. Why have it? Yeah.
Therefore, you have to blame all of the teams for not changing it. But whilst it's there, you have to obey by the rules. We all have to obey by the rules. They must do so. They're not above the law. They should, in my view, and will be, at least there will be an inquiry. Whether they get punished or not, who knows?
Let's do one of my scientific showing of hands. Do you think today was team orders? Hands up if you believe it was team orders today.
That's easy.
Okay.
Easy, yeah.
Hands up if you think that Ferrari will be investigated and found guilty of that by the FIA.
No, they won't.
And finally, hands up if you think now is the time, and perhaps this starts the debate, team orders should return to Formula One.
Team orders have never been away from Formula One, Jake.
Legally return to Formula One.
They can't just rewrite the rules in a heartbeat. You know, it has to be done through the World Council and through the right procedure. Only for 2011, and you know, you'll not stop it.
It was triple. Just to answer Martin just a little bit, 1,000%. I mean, there was a very strict order given to Ralf Schumacher to say that he could not pass Damon Hill. For sure, I was entitled to do that. It was not against the law to do so. Did I intervene? Yes. And it was me, not the engineer, as David made it a point. And it has to be the team principal that does that. It would be shirking responsibility if you didn't.
Okay, let's join Mike Gascoigne down at Lotus Racing. Mike, thank you very much for joining us. We'll talk about your Grand Prix in just a couple of moments, but let me just share a few emails that have been coming in on the F1 forum. I know you've been part of the forum in the past. Jake, as a long-time F1 fan, I'm very sad to see Ferrari up to their old tricks. Well done to Rob Smedley for letting us know how he felt about it. A message here from John Sings. From Norfolk, eh? Where we're from. I spent many hours of my time Friday, Saturday and Sunday to witness this, Mike. I'm not interested in teams. I'm interested in the sport. Unbelievable. And finally, Preeti from Kent. Haven't Ferrari broken an F1 rule today? Not a happy girl. You've been watching it from your end of the pit lane. First of all, team orders, yes or no?
Well, you know, it's a professional sport, and there's always going to be team orders in Formula One. You've got, you know, it is a team. There's a team championship, and you're going to want to do what's best for that. Also, to put one driver in a better position to win the championship. When, you know, if you haven't got the quickest car, you've got to prioritise. But I've been watching some of the forum and listening to the comments, and I have to agree 100% with Martin. If you're going to do it cleverly. And don't tell the whole world. And if you've told the whole world, don't try and then say you didn't tell the whole world, because you blatantly did. So it just was awfully handled and very unprofessional. But I'm afraid it's always going to happen, and we have to see if you're going to have a regulation that says it shouldn't, then you've got to enforce it or take the regulation away.
Do you do it cleverly, or do you not do it at all?
Well, unfortunately, we don't have the need to do it quite so blatantly. No, you're always going to prioritise. And the trouble is, when you do it like that, if the driver says, it was my decision, then you can't prove anything otherwise, you know. So you're not going to be able to take any action about it. You know, the telemetry is irrelevant. What was said on the radio is irrelevant. But why say it on the radio? Because you're only going to create this sort of controversy.
What sort of taste does it leave in the mouths of the other teams up and down the pit lane, Mike?
I think from my point of view, we had a good chuckle about it. It livened it up on the pit wall because you knew what it was going to create. But, you know, I think we'd all do similar things, perhaps not quite so blatantly, and perhaps not at this stage of the season. I mean, you saw some great racing in Turkey between drivers, you know, especially between Jensen and Lewis. And it was allowed to happen. And teams like McLaren, like Williams, have always allowed it to happen and have lost championships because of it. You have to say Ferrari as a team have always been very sort of cynical about it and continue to be, but they should have just handled it so much better, because I think we all have those sort of code words, and we would all make decisions as you know, team owners or whatever on the pit wall, but just don't do it so stupidly.
Mike, we've got a different regime in the FIA now with Jean Todt in charge and different personnel. Do you think on another day, in a different regime, we would be now listening to an FIA inquiry into this?
Well, I mean, it's a difficult thing because, as I said earlier, if the driver just sits there and said it was my decision, no matter, you know, how are you going to disprove that? You can't. I think you've either got to do that and do it every time, or you've got to accept it. It's very, very difficult. And where do you draw the line? Where do you say it is the right part of a season to prioritise one driver or not? You know, it's very, very difficult. I mean, I've enjoyed listening to Eddie's version of what happened on the pit wall in Spa, because I was actually sitting there next to him, and it seems a lot different to what I remember going on.
Thanks, Mike. I can always rely on you for a bit of variation. But anyway, I'm going to ask you the question now to just get my own back. Surely the fans and the people, that regulation was brought in as a result of the Michael Schumacher-Barrichello situation in Austria. And it was because the FIA came under a lot of stick that the fans felt deprived, robbed, stolen from by virtue of the fact that these two great drivers weren't allowed to have it out between themselves to the end. Surely there's a sense of somewhat theft or fraud involved there.
Yeah, I mean, I agree totally. And actually, as you know, I Twitter from the pit wall during the race, and a lot of people have asked me, and I've made some comments on what happened. And the feedback is massively that everyone feels that they were cheated of a result. They were cheated of watching a great finish to a Grand Prix. And I think it's time for, you know, Formula One to take note of that. I mean, it was, you know, the thing that happened before in 92 was just so blatant. And obviously, sorry, 2002. It was just so blatant. But this wasn't much less blatant, apart from it wasn't done sort of one lap from the end. So you would have thought Ferrari would have learnt from that, but obviously they haven't.
Well, Mike, I think we were all in agreement then that it's there, it always has been there. If we can maybe move it on, if everyone's had enough of that, what happened in your race today? Could you're leading up Lotus, aren't you? So can we find out what happened to you guys?
Yeah, thanks, David, for that. Not a great day at the office. You know, Jarno had a gearbox problem early on. We started him on the hard tyre. He was going to do a long stint. Heikki started on the softer tyre. Was having a pretty good race, although he didn't have great sort of pace all weekend. He's been struggling a little bit. And just with the blue flags, he made a mistake. He was very honest and admitted to it. He turned in. He didn't realise there were 3 cars coming past him. It's just very, very difficult situation for guys. You know, Heikki's a very fair, experienced racer. So if he makes a mistake like that, you know, you've got to accept that it is difficult. So shame, but let's pack up and get to Hungary.
Is just on that incident then, is that something you talk to his engineer about and make sure that he's giving him the information how many cars are behind him? Is that just a slight communication issue?
Yeah, I mean, we do, but in that particular situation, we'd had Glock had just stopped and put on the soft tyre and was obviously going to be very quick. And although we were sort of 17, 18 seconds in front of him, Heike had a load of cars to let pass, so that gap was going to come down. And we actually sort of told him that there was a lot of cars, but that he should manage it and lose as little time as possible. Because if we're shouting at him all the time, blue flag, let him pass, you know, it's more difficult for him to manage. So we were sort of trying not to overburden him with information. You could say we got that wrong, we got it right. But, you know, he did actually know there were cars coming up. He just didn't want to let them all past at that corner because, again, he's racing, you know, and he's got to be allowed to race. Yes, there's blue flags, although my team boss, Tony Fernandez, wants to get rid of them and make everyone race for every pass. But, you know, he's trying to do his race and he's trying to make sure he stays clear of Glock, and it just turned out badly.
OK, Mike, thank you very much for joining us again, and we will see you in Hungary in, well, just a few days' time, 3 or 4 days, and we'll see you there.
Thanks, guys.
OK, thanks a lot. Just to bring you some breaking news, we've heard that the Ferrari bosses have been summoned to the stewards, so we'll wait and see what happens there. Just to give you a quick idea of the feeling on Twitter, Pidge on the Wing has dropped us a message. I agree with Martin. Team orders make races more interesting. Brackets Mika Salo. John Houston says Ferrari's punishment should be Ferrari 0 points, Alonso 0 points, Massa 25 points. That's from John in Norfolk. Genju Ramatio says there was a great deal of anger following Häkkinen's win in Australia in '98. Anger seems to be the general feeling of the Formula One fan at the moment, Martin.
And I can completely understand that. What I'm finding fascinating there, Jake, is that this happened 20 or so laps before the end of the Grand Prix. Yeah. And all of a sudden now the stewards are interested. We didn't see anything coming up saying this will be investigated after the race. And I think they might be reacting to the negativity that's out there.
Do you think?
Why didn't they state straight away they were going to? Because it was as clear as day what was going on.
They've waited a while to hand out a few punishments this season, haven't they?
To hand out some punishments, not to hand out a notification of an investigation.
Yep. No, true. Very true. And finally, Craigsy says it's not team orders because they've always been there. It's insulting the fans' intelligence that the fans don't like. So that's just a little idea of what's going on Twitter. We'll get through to more of your emails as well very shortly. But let's take a look at the start of the Grand Prix. Let's talk about racing for a few moments. And David, it was a moment where you were looking at the screen in slight disbelief at this point at the start of the race.
Well, the start systems that all these drivers use, they have one clutch, but they use 2 clutch paddles to activate that. And I think that Sebastian said that when he released his first clutch paddle, everything wasn't quite synchronized, grip levels, tires, all that sort of thing, and he bogged down slightly. And that was exactly what we were talking about before going on air, that Fernando, to win this race, would have to make something happen before turn 2, otherwise it was probably going to be very, very difficult for him. And he did. And it's almost a complete replay of what we saw Sebastian do in Silverstone, where he's gone off the line and immediately had to come to the right-hand side. For me, if you've made a bad start, the best thing to do is just go straight for as long as you can until you've basically hooked up all the grip that's available, and then start your weaving. To start weaving whilst you've still got some wheel spin, you're only going to put more weight on one axle and or one wheel and affect further your grip. So maybe he can learn a little something from that.
Yeah, I can completely agree with you, David. That's the second consecutive race where he's spent so much time trying to nail the guy alongside him towards the pit lane. He's actually lost out heavily. It cost him a puncture in Silverstone. So I completely agree. As soon as you start putting any lateral movement in the car, you spin the wheels up. You start losing forward motion. You're moving around on the wheel. And look, that's a great shot we're going to be watching through the rest of this year. Tremendous shot. But I think Sebastian needs to just focus ahead. And if he'd have taken a wider line into turn 1, he'd have been possibly between those 2 Ferraris now.
It's abundantly clear. I think that Vettel will leave the end of this season ruining the day that he has tried to make contact with the guy alongside him. He did not need to do this. He made a failure on it. He wouldn't have been back in 3rd place. He would have been at worst 2nd place and probably been able to pick off whoever it was going to be. He left the door absolutely clearly open for Massa, gave him a free run, and he's the person who's 3rd on the grid, and he's 3rd on the podium. He should have been at least on the 2nd place.
Well, you could actually hear the difference there, couldn't you, on Massa's car? The engine almost bogs down in the initial phase and then picks up some wheel spin once the car's got momentum, and that's what gives you the perfect start. I wouldn't be surprised if that was a below 4-second start. They sort of measure this up to 100 meters from the start point, and that would definitely be, well, clearly it was a great start relative to everyone around him.
In terms of starting in pole position, Martin, these are the finishes that Sebastian has had this year. 4th, DNF, 6th, 1st, 7th, and then today. He almost doesn't feel comfortable in pole position. Is it too much pressure for him, do you think, at the front there? He thinks he has to do something rather than just get off the line and go?
Yeah, I think there's a pressure element because they practice those starts all weekend at the end of the pit lane. And there's so much technology and so much rehearsal goes into that it can only be, and it is now, thankfully, fully under control of the driver. He's got to go through a process. It can only be a pressure environment that stops those starts or other things that you do while decisions you make in a split second at a couple of 100 miles an hour. Pressure and stress, as we all know, affects you mentally and physically.
Rich Forth has got in touch. This is a good one for you, actually, David. He says, hi, I want to comment about Vettel and how he starts the race when he's on pole. He always tries, hello, Sebastian. I was just reading an email about you. Yeah, dive in and sit down there. Well, I'll get to that in just a moment. Just talk us through the race from your point of view today.
Well, I mean, I don't want to talk about the start.
No.
Yeah, obviously, lost 2 positions down to turn 1. Not really sure what happened. I think this time we had the grip, but procedure-wise, it should have been fine. I mean, I released the first clutch lever, and the revs dropped a lot, and I lost the initial acceleration. That's where I lost out most. And then obviously, tried to defend the position to Fernando, who I saw side by side, but then there was no chance. So we were both surprised that Felipe made it and had such a good start. I think he just showed what was possible from the clean side. So obviously we lost, the positions there. After that, it was difficult to keep up with the Ferraris, and I think they were maybe, just this 10th or 2 quicker today in the race trim. Difficult to say what would have happened if we would have stayed ahead. Then you have clean air and the possibility to look after your tires maybe a bit better, but that's how it goes.
Sure. The email I was in the midst of reading out was from Rich Forth, and he said, hi, I wanted to comment about Vettel and how he starts the race when he's on pole. Rich seems to think you try to run second place off the track, and in the last 2 races where you've had pole, the trick hasn't worked. Is it a specific decision of yours to try and come across and cover the guy?
Who said it? Rick?
This is from Rich Forth.
Oh,
we haven't got his home address or his phone number.
I hope that he doesn't replace me in the next one.
Well, yeah, I'm sure he wouldn't do a job quite as well. But is there something in there?
It's not a trick. You don't try to do something stupid or unfair. Obviously, you start from pole. You realize if you have a good start and you don't have to do anything rather than accelerating and go to first corner, or you have a bad start. So unfortunately, the last 2 races, he's probably right. I mean, we had a bad start for different reasons. Once in Silverstone with bad grip. I mean, just poor grip. You've seen Alonso behind had a bad start too, and this time we just messed up the procedure and didn't get the maximum. So what you try is to defend to second, because we have that big mirrors on the car, so you can't really see much. I think you can ask David. He used to
block everybody,
complain, and always criticize the size of the mirrors. We would have loved to have these nice ones they have on the truck, but obviously for aero reasons we're not allowed.
He still moans a lot now.
I do. I was going to ask a question, but Britta is from the wings saying that
2 more questions, really quick.
Saying that Sebastian has to go. So
we'll be quick.
It's almost better if you didn't qualify on pole. Your conversion rate is hopeless. It's actually really poor compared to the rest of the points that you've had. Just don't even go out and just qualify 3rd, 4th, 5th. You will win the race.
Yeah. I think if you go around and ask on Friday or Saturday morning where they want to be after qualifying, everyone will answer on pole. So nothing changes. Obviously, statistics are very bad. We were on pole many times, didn't really convert it to victory many times. So we have to work on that. But as I said, every race there's its own story, and I think we had great starts in the past, so we don't need to worry. Just this time it didn't work.
Sebastian, we're hearing that Ferrari have been called to the stewards to explain the synchronized swimming of their 2 drivers for the 1-2. You think there's a chance you could win this Grand Prix yet? Do you think you should be the winner of this Grand Prix, that they've broken the rules?
Well, I mean, first of all, I haven't seen it. I just came back from the press conference. I haven't seen the incidents.
Would you like to have a look? Have you got time?
Yeah, if you have it just here.
We showed you. We can also hear
because
the
it was,
team
as
radio.
I understand, after turn 6, and I was just braking for turn 6, so I couldn't really see it.
Okay. We'll watch this, then you'll hear the team
Yep.
radio coming up. So this is Felipe first, Fernando just behind him, and then if you can hear this, Rob Smedley comes on and says this.
Okay, so Fernando is faster than you. Can you confirm you understood that message?
And then a few moments later, this happened. Clear cut to you, Sebastian, as a Formula 1 racing driver?
Well, obviously we have I think, you know, we had been in tricky situations this year already, so it's good that the spotlight, again, bad spotlight, is not on us.
Very good.
I don't recommend to both of them to crash to each other, obviously.
No, of course not.
It's followed by many questions, difficult questions as well. First time I've seen it, I think now I understand why they had many questions as well. Halfway through the press conference, I asked if I can go and have a shower because, you know, I was sitting there, basically no questions to me. I can see why now. I think the FIA knows what is the rule and what to do. Obviously,
sure.
You know, there's a lot of background in these stories always. I mean, we've seen different races a couple of years back as well. Difficult situations with who passed who and gained an advantage, cutting a chicane or not. Was saying on the radio things that he didn't say afterwards in the press conference. Was lying, was not lying. So I don't know. I think what we have to do is remain strong. I think it was a positive date for us. Obviously, we didn't win. We would have loved to. But still, we showed again that our car is quick and competitive, and we were able to fight for the podium. We achieved that. It was nice to me, you know, in my home Grand Prix to be on the podium and see the people. A lot of people came today, so it was nice to be there and get the credit. But we have to stay focused and focus on our own business. As we've seen this year already, a couple of times it was not as smooth as we were hoping for, but yeah, hopefully we have a good race next week as well.
Great. Thank you so much for joining us. Another good result, and you're still in the championship fight, and you really do smell quite strongly of champagne, so maybe a shower is the best thing.
Yeah, good that you didn't say anything else.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you very much. Nice to chat, and Britta will be delighted now. She was hopping up and down there behind the camera. I blame the long answers rather than the long questions.
Absolutely. I think she knows that his answers are always very, very long, so she was actually saying cut before you asked the first question.
You know what, though? Fair enough for... hello, Christian. Dive in. Grab hold of that. Fair enough for your driver to come in here and want to see the incident with Ferrari and give us his thoughts on it. He's a good young lad. Head screwed on, isn't he?
Yeah, no, for 23 years of age, he's remarkably mature, and, you know, it was a shame for him today. First 500 metres dictated his race, but, you know, just not the start that he wanted or we wanted, but thereafter he was, you know, he drove a faultless race.
Let me put the same question to you that Martin put to Sebastian. We now hear that the FIA have had a word with Ferrari, called them over. Do you still think you can win this Grand Prix? And does the inquiry have anything to do with you? Have you protested the result? Do you know if any other teams have asked questions?
No, I mean, it's down to the FIA now to look at the information with the stewards. And for me personally, I thought it was a clear contravention of the rules. It was as clear a team instruction as you're going to get. The cars changed position in a very obvious way, and I think it was a great shame that you know, Felipe or Fernando was gifted the win. Ferrari, a great team, and they didn't need to do that.
Christian, aren't you lucky that we're not on your case this weekend? No one's talking about nose cones anymore, and we're actually agreeing with one another, which is remarkable. But, you know, the point I made, whether we like it or not, there is a rule. It is there. It's a recent rule, and you have to abide by the rules. I don't believe... Would you have done that in the situation?
No, absolutely. I think we've clearly demonstrated in Istanbul that, you know, we've let our guys race. Now, rightly or wrongly, that's what we've allowed them to do, and I think it's really a shame for Formula One today that you know, Felipe wasn't allowed to race Fernando, and they moved the cars around, and it was, you know, it was a shame. But you know, Ferrari, they didn't need to do that. They'd performed fantastically well this weekend.
But Christian, let's be honest. In Istanbul, you were trying to think of how to get Sebastian Vettel past Mark Webber. You were on the pit wall thinking of the team because they were catching, you really needed Sebastian past Mark, didn't you?
No,
you were going through the same thought process, and then ran into each other.
No, we allowed them to race each other on the track, and they got, you know, what happened. A racing incident, the two of them made contact, and obviously a lot has been talked about that. Rightly or wrongly, we let them between them. Mark wasn't told, pull out the way. Sebastian wasn't told, overtake. And I think, you know, the rules are pretty clear regarding team orders, and I think, you know, it's a shame that we're talking about this after a Grand Prix that Ferrari have performed so well at. But you know, in my opinion, it was an instruction. They did move the cars around very blatantly, and you know, it's now down to the stewards to decide where it goes from here.
I think there's no doubt about that. But in Istanbul, your two drivers were neck and neck on points, and Ferrari's drivers are 21 points apart. So, do you think that's different to 2002 in Austria? Do you think it matters? Or is it just all about the sport and what the fans think?
Well, 21 points in last year's system is about 8. So 21 points isn't a huge amount. And to do that so early in the championship is... I think the most important thing is that we have clarity. You know, if that's allowed, then it's clear for all of the teams. But the regulations are fairly explicit. If it's not allowed, which is what we've assumed, then... you know, let's have clarity on it, because if it is allowed, then that will happen up and down the pit lane.
Christian, I'm going to jump to your defence for its first and only time. What you're effectively saying, had you employed what Ferrari did today, Sebastian would be sitting there with 25 points more.
Yes, you know, if we'd have told Mark Webber, slow down, let your teammate pass, in other words, and then apologise to him, then Sebastian would have had more points. But we didn't do that. We allowed the drivers to race, which was, you know, what we've allowed them to do, you know, for most of this year. As we saw at Silverstone, there was no team order into the first turn. It was down to what they did on the track.
Christian, if I can just move it on to the race today, it didn't really seem that at any point Sebastian had the pace to really get in there and challenge Ferrari, even when they seemed to be fighting between the two of themselves at the front. What is it? Is it just a nature of this particular track, or is there something with the car with heavy fuel that makes it more difficult to exploit the potential that clearly is there in qualifying?
Yeah, I think we saw today that even yesterday it was massively close with the Ferraris. I think on heavier fuel they did look a little bit quicker than us. They were able to build up a gap before the stop with both of their cars, and but then. On the prime tyre, as the fuel load came out of the car, Sebastian's pace increased. I'm not sure yet whether there was any damage to the front of Sebastian's car when he was lapping, I think, the Virgin early on at turn 6, but it looked mightily close there. No, the Ferraris were very quick today, and I think if we'd have made the start, it would have been a challenge. I think we could have kept them behind us, but we would have certainly had our hands full. I think the start for us dictated the outcome of the race today.
We get plenty of messages on the F1 forum, lots of them from people who can't work out why a team would be good in qualifying and not so quick in the race. It depends on a lot of variables, but other things you can do to say, all right, qualifying we're there, what can we now do to improve our race pace? Is that something that the team are looking at all the time now?
We're always looking at that. We run, you know, heavy on fuel on a Friday, looking at race pace. We could see on Friday that the Ferraris were certainly pretty quick, and you know, obviously the running here was slightly compromised on Friday by the weather. But you know, Ferraris, this kind of circuit has suited them very, very well, and they've been, you know, very quick. I don't think they've had a significant update since Silverstone, but this track has suited them clearly very well.
Christian, are you forcing each other, the front-running teams, to put too little fuel in now? Have you gone too far with this fueling? Because all we hear all afternoon now is like, get out of the throttle, change gear early, manage the fuel. Have you all gone a bit too extreme?
Well, it's a new challenge. I mean, this year there's that balance that, you know, people are a lot more clever than me look at the numbers and come up with a simulation as to what's the optimum starting weight versus your consumption. And, you know, obviously if you just run heavy and fill the tank, then you're going to compromise your pace at the beginning of the race. So it's finding that balance of the amount of fuel versus the consumption through the engine modes that you run through the race from start to finish.
Okay, Christian, thank you very much for joining us. See you in a few days. Looking forward to Hungary?
Yeah, I think, you know, Hungary is going to be another challenge again. Tight and twisty circuit, very dusty there, probably pretty hot, but yeah, I think it's going to be very close between you know, the main three teams.
Brilliant. And you've had nothing to say about his dress sense all weekend. He's gone very conservative,
I think he looks great today.
Sorry, he asked me, was I going to a funeral yesterday? What do you make of that? Any reason for such a thing?
No. I can see Martin's adopted your style today.
We are style icons. Don't you worry about it.
No.
Okay. Thanks for that, Eddie. Just in case you were in any doubt, he's a style icon. Good to chat. See you soon. All the best. Thank you very much. Put that down there. Let's now hear then from Mark Webber. He finished 6th in today's Grand Prix.
Mark, was it a frustrating day today?
Yeah, well, I was actually enjoying the first part of the race. A good little scrap with Lewis. You know, he was didn't look too comfortable on the option, and I was getting held up a bit there. So I thought, yeah, we'll take the race to the pit stops. We decided to pit, and I thought he might come in with me, but he stayed out obviously a lap longer. In the end, the guys did a good job in the pit stop, and then we came back out in traffic, which was a little bit of a gamble, obviously, to try and jump Lewis. So we lost, obviously, a bit of track to him, and then obviously Jensen tried a different strategy and went longer, and so he jumped me as well. So then after, the race turned in a different way because we had an oil consumption problem, so we had to get the car to the end. So it was, you know, I was watching the race on the big screens and seeing what was happening a bit further down the road. So unfortunately, I wasn't in it today, but I'll be back.
If you had time to have a little watch of the big screens, what were you making of what was going on in front of you?
I saw obviously the lead change. I didn't know if Massa was in tyre problems or something, which would have been unusual, but all I saw was that they changed the lead, so I saw that at the hairpin on that screen, and I couldn't get to the next screen quick enough to see what happened on the next one.
Okay, let's have a look at a few incidents then from the Ferrari situation. And you actually noticed early on the frustration with Fernando Alonso, didn't you? Just a slight flick of the right hand as he was getting held up behind his teammates.
Well, that's right. As they were going down to turn 6, the hairpin, Massa had already had a lock-up going into turn 2, which allowed Fernando to get in a little bit closer, obviously not close enough to have a go. But then under braking here, you can see that, there you go, rear axle locks up, gets a little bit wide, and then look at his right hand as he comes off the corner. Little gesture. Now, maybe I overread that. Maybe he was just stretching his fingers, but to me, I don't know, Martin, what's your view on that? It looked like he was kind of...
I agree with you completely. I think it was, look, you're beginning to hold me up now. We're on these hard tyres, but we've seen quite an emotional Fernando Alonso in the car of late anyway. It was, I don't know what, it was like, hey, let me go. It was, I don't know why he thought Felipe Massa should, but it clearly did later on.
I'm quite certain if we were able to get the sound, because we don't always get the sound from the in-car footage at the exact right time, I'm quite certain that gesticulation of his hand will correspond exactly with the time that he's speaking to his pit and saying, look, I'm being held up here, let me go.
No, because there's 5 upshifts out of that corner, and there's 5 upshifts out of that corner before the next, before you slow down, and can you do it with both?
You can do it with both.
Flick with the left on that one.
Yeah, you can't. I don't know what the Ferrari system is, but certainly I used to have a system which was a rocker. So if I needed to make an adjustment with my right hand when you're doing upshifts, you just flick away. But yeah, it's interesting though. What I don't know with these cars, obviously, because I've not raced them, but just what is that window where you get into that dirty air? And you know, I said earlier in the show that he was passing the start-finish at 0.6, 0.7 behind Felipe very often, and that to me would be close enough, certainly when I was racing, to be in a window where you're quick enough to run in the dirty air and stay close enough, you are quicker.
But he blew it. He blew his one chance to overtake him, in my view, which is when he did get really close behind him and tried to... Why would you go right in that? I don't know if we got that ready to play in, but when he went right through the right kink before the Mercedes corner, he blew his chance there. And
actually looking at that, it was shaping up to be a nice battle between 2 teammates, wasn't it?
Not alone that. I think, yes, you will agree, everyone will agree, judging by the way the car was either braking on the front and the back getting away from him, that the car was relatively unstable. But he had managed that. That was a difficult time for those couple of laps. Then Fernando just couldn't keep up with Felipe. Felipe had sorted those little problems out and he was making the move. So if there was going to be team orders, Martin, that's the time it should have been done, where the car were locking up and there was seriously a problem with the car. But well done to Massa. He sorted that out while he was leading the race, and he seemed to get his car into much better balance.
Just to let you know what's going on actually out in the paddock, a lot of journalists and a slightly exasperated Lee McKenzie just went running off in that direction. So there are things going on out there still. We know that the Ferrari guys have come out of the stewards' inquiry, but we now believe that the drivers are now going into the FIA stewards' inquiry alongside Rob Smedley, there's been also a Ferrari press conference going on. As soon as there is any news, we can see actually this is what's happening in the press conference at the moment. It's in Italian, so there's not much point in us joining that, apart from the Italian speakers amongst you. But you can see the journalists asking questions, and Stefano Domenicali, no doubt, continuing to defend the actions of the team. He's already been in with the stewards, and now, as I say, the drivers and Rob Smedley have joined him in there.
Be interesting in the forum. I've been at so many stewards' inquiries and such like that. And it's normal that they would have individuals. They will not have, I'll be surprised if they have the both drivers in at the same time. They will be individually questioned, and it'd be interesting how those answers are coordinated and put together, because that may be a problem.
Just explain the process as two former drivers. What happens when you go into an inquiry like that, guys?
Well, it's certainly what Eddie said used to be the case. You were taken in individually, but certainly the last few years that I was in Formula One, you would go in all together, because one, it's to speed up the process, and the stewards are watching for any sort of looks between you, but it's also to allow no doubt about what's been said. So certainly when you have two drivers over an incident, you know there's not he said, she said. You hear firsthand, you get a chance and a right of reply. So it's more like a debate than anything else. And then the stewards open the book at wherever the relevant page is and say, right, there's a $100,000 fine and a 15-place penalty.
I tell you what, listening to their words and their facial expressions, I wouldn't want to be them trying to defend that.
Listen,
if now they've been challenged, that's going to be tough to defend.
The easiest and the best way is to tell exactly the truth, because otherwise they are going to be caught. If they try to fiddle around with a falsified answer, which I'm quite certain they won't, these people, the stewards, a considerable number of them have very, very detailed legal education, because that's why they're there, and they have to, so they will understand the normal process of legal right as to the position of whether they're right or wrong. And I disagree in one way with David. I can't see how they would let Felipe and Fernando go in together, because it's almost contradictory. You're like having the judge and the jury and the prosecution in at the same time.
In a court of law, you have everyone in there. You don't separate. They tend to do it more like a court, where the defendant is in there, prosecutor's in there, and you wait your moment of reply.
Let's consider the penalties. If they do decide that they've broken that rule 39.1, what can they do? Because that doesn't fit into the normal in-race penalties or post-race with a 25-second.
Do they have the remit to make a penalty up if there's nothing written down in black and white?
In the past, it could be even, you're banned as a team for 3 races or
did
something
they not say
extreme.
That? Can we take our memories back to Jerez 97, was it? Was it not? Did Max Mosley at that point not say something about what they would do? Because there was the incident regarding what happened with Michael and Villeneuve and then McLaren, and there was all sorts of things. Can anyone rack their brains on that?
Michael was taken out of the championship completely. He was eliminated from the championship of that year.
For the avoidance of any doubt, these results are provisional, and they will remain provisional until such time as the stewards have made and signed off on them, because the signature is not on the results page. And until they are fully satisfied that this is right, and remember, the eyes of the world are looking at this, so they can't possibly just cloak something over it. This will be properly investigated.
Do you think no doubt about it? John Todd would have called in as the president, and clearly he's got not intimate, but he's got very good knowledge of Stefano Domenicali. They worked together for many years.
Absolutely, but they're a day late and a dollar short, aren't they? It's almost like they're reacting to the media and the fan response, because it happened a long way before the end of the race.
Perhaps Jean Todt, though, will be quite sensitive to this whole thing, because if we go back to the Ferrari days and Jean Todt's Ferrari days, 2002, this is actually what happened in Austria that year. And this left such a nasty taste in the mouth of people. I mean, obviously you, David, were in the car, you were driving at the time, but you were covering it for television, as you are today, Martin. And to see Rubens being lifted up onto the top step by Michael and things like that, it was just horrible, wasn't it?
Yeah, especially as I can't remember the details, but Michael was sailing on in the championship.
Yeah,
it wasn't like they were trying to recover a championship position. I mean, let's be quite clear. Nobody got booed on the podium today as they did back then. That was a black and white situation, crass and awfully handled, awfully executed, because Michael was looking very comfortable in the championship.
And here's the moment where he tried to push Rubens up there, and clearly Rubens didn't fancy going up. Memories of that day, David?
Yeah, indeed, it was just very badly handled. But, you know, again, if I think back to my own experience, '98, and Martin was managing my contracts at that time, the team, McLaren, we had a problem with reliability. We had a quick car. A decision was made that the drivers were free to race to the first corner. And then after that, we had to drive slowly, effectively, to preserve the car to win the race. And that's what we were doing until Mika made an untimed pit stop. I was in front, and an instruction was given to carry out what was pre-agreed. And we didn't realise, you know, I certainly didn't suggest let me finish second. I wanted to win the race, but we didn't realise what the public's reaction would be. And I think that what happens is when you're operating these teams, you're so immersed in the business of trying to, you know, get the sponsorship in and get the car built and manage everything that's going on. You can't sort of step back like that we're able to today and take a bigger view, a view at the bigger picture. So I think this is another example of that. You know, what happened there in 2002 was badly handled. Today it has been badly handled.
I must say, just for a second, Rubens Barrichello was 4 years with me, and you saw he is one of the nicest guys in Formula One, make no mistake. But I think the telltale there was Ralf Schumacher, Michael's brother. It's the first time I've seen this.
If we ever look back, actually, if we
you
could
go
roll
back
back
and
to that
look
moment.
at his face, he is horrified because he knows this is the biggest clanger of all time being made by Ferrari. And I don't think they've learned anything by this because, as Martin says, it was appallingly handled here today.
If we have another look at it, because Ralph, of course, finished third, and so he was up on the podium with the two guys. And as he looks at his, I mean, look at that face. It's a look of what was that all about?
Say, Michael, come on, you can't be serious. You
the
just
fans
can't.
are booing at this point, remember. He's just got out of the car and he's being booed.
He's afraid to take his helmet off, clearly. It's shocking.
Well, it's now in the hands of the FIA stewards. We know Danny Sullivan's on there. He's the driver representative. He won Indy 15 or so races in Formula One. You think it was team orders. We had Sebastian Vettel. He was quite clear, actually, after hearing it. He said, well, yeah, I can see why people are kicking up a fuss. Someone like having a driver involved in this situation, it could have, for the first time, could make quite a big impact, couldn't it, Martin? Because he could say, hold on, I know what's going on here. I've done this for a living.
Yeah, Danny, I took his drive over in '84, so it's 1983, the last time he raced in Formula One. But we're back to a common sense situation here and what the rules actually say. I mean, there can be no doubt that it was team orders. I don't think anybody's in any doubt about that at all. It's just a question of how it was executed and whether they'll get away with it or not. Danny's got a tough call there, I would say, and so have all the stewards in terms of, you know, if they're going to fundamentally affect the championship, how big an impact they want to put on the Ferrari team. But now the system has been triggered, and I didn't think it would be, now it has, I think Ferrari have got a major problem on their hands, frankly, because they can't unravel that radio message, the silliness in the press conferences and the sort of fibs, let's call them, that's happened since.
Yeah, that's as far as we want to go, I think. Fibs is about the right word. Well, a can of worms has been opened. We'll try and stay on the F1 forum as long as we can until we find out what's going to happen. We've done over an hour already, but let's run through a few emails and things. Is DC going to a fancy dress party as John Button? That's just the first email I clicked on. Perhaps you should...
I look that old.
Perhaps you should consult the style icon, the self-titled style icon sitting to your right-hand side.
Martin Brundle for the avoidance of doubt.
Fashion's a personal thing. I respect their view, but he's probably sitting there in his underpants watching this, isn't he?
Well, the question came in from Kaz.
With underpants
from
today.
Kaz in the West
underpants?
Midlands. Let's run through his next question. Do you think the race result is representative of the cars this weekend? So we've got two Ferraris, and then we've got Sebastian Vettel with the two McLarens ahead of Mark Webber there, and then we've sort of got into this midfield scrap between the Renaults and the Williams and the Mercedes. Do you think that's pretty much where we're at? Ferrari and Red Bull now have moved ahead of the pack?
Yeah, certainly on this track layout, you've got to remember that. It's completely different to Spa or Barcelona, Silverstone, where you've got the long, very high-speed corners where you need a different type of aerodynamic package and balance. So, you know, we've got to remember this is a different kind of racetrack.
Pete, just turn around and take a look out the window if you can. Fernando Alonso, I don't know whether you can spot him a bit further to your right. Yep, there he goes. He had a big smile on his face. Obviously, he used to be a Renault boy, and as he came up here, he gave a high five to one of his former.
That's interesting.
Colleagues.
Not so many people around Felipe, is there?
No, it's interesting. That is Felipe, not Felipe's brother. Are you sure? I don't believe.
Felipe.
I don't believe that so few people would be around Felipe Massa as he makes his way down the paddock. That's amazing. Let's actually hear from Felipe, because we heard from him a couple of moments ago. He spoke to Lee McKenzie.
Felipe, well, congratulations, I suppose, on a second place, but you led for so long. It must be bittersweet. Just tell us about this overtake. Did you decide to let Fernando pass?
Yes.
It was your decision only?
Yeah, sure. I mean, also because I didn't have a good pace on the hard tires, which is not the first time happens this year. I mean, most of the time we use these tires, it happens the same, so it was my decision.
Do you understand why a lot of people are thinking that team orders came into play?
Sorry?
Are you understanding, though, a lot of people are very angry, I suppose, and fans that team orders came into play, that Ferrari told Fernando to go past you?
Well, for sure, you know, we always need to think that, you know, we're working for the team, and the team orders, we didn't have team orders in the race. So I take my decision because I was struggling on the hard tires, and that's is the direction.
So Fernando was faster than you?
Yeah, I think everybody saw, no?
And just one more from me, please. Just tell us about your championships. So as long as Fernando is faster than you and in front of you in the championship, is your championship over now?
I don't know, for sure. We lost so many points. You know, we are many points behind, you know, the leader. And I think, you know, to win this championship, it would be very, very difficult for me, you know. Also because I lost so many points in the race that I was able to score good points, you know. So, but anyway, you never know.
If you'd won today, would it have changed?
I would have been happy.
Well, is that a well-briefed driver, David?
I think his behaviour is impeccable, isn't it? He understands exactly what he needs to say. You know, I think that's a very professional racing driver. You know, a younger Felipe probably would have, you know, said things that made it quite clear that there was a team instruction. But he's been told he was not quicker, which is obviously a message that's been decided beforehand. And he said, "Look, I've taken my decision. I'm a team player."
Lee was giving him a good opportunity to rehearse what he was going to say in front of the stewards. He probably didn't know he was going to be in the stewards at that point. But unfortunately for them, there'll be a lot of data and previous laps, previous sectors. And of course, he was pulling away for quite a time. Once he settled down, as Eddie said earlier on. But then you have to say, Fernando was coming back at him. It'll be a data fest as to who can prove what.
Well, my experience on that is the stewards have got no idea. You put a piece of data in front of them, they're not used to looking at this information. You know,
that's where the driver representative makes a difference.
Sorry, in the stewards meeting. Well, what happens normally, if you go there, the team manager or the engineer goes along and he'll explain to the stewards what they're looking at, which is not really a very good system. I'm not sure that the data is the thing they really need to know. Clearly, Felipe said, yes, I took a decision. You know, he's going to say he lifted. They don't need to look at squiggly lines for that.
I've got to just reply to something that happened just a touch earlier, if I may. Felipe, we've talked about Oscar performances. That's a classic. I mean, it goes down in the archives as being one of the great deliberations I've ever seen, because clearly he can't possibly believe what, or expect us to believe what he's just seen. And if ever anyone has repaid Ferrari for the loyalty of taking him in front of Raikkonen last year, or indeed for his seat for the next 2 years, he's repaid him 100-fold today.
Team player.
He's a team player.
I suppose what the stewards might do is listen to what he has to say, listen carefully as we've just done, and be impressed by the fact that it was his decision and nobody else's. And then they might want to listen to the team radio. And things like this probably tell us more than Felipe did.
Good lad, mate. Good lad. Felipe Massa is back. Eh? Back in business. Good boy. Great result. And very, very, very magnanimous. You won't have any idea what that word means, so I'll explain it to you later.
I think that was actually the most helpful radio transmission there was in the whole process. Magnanimous. In other words, you did it. You made that decision. You're back in business. I think there was a bit of repair work going on there by now.
OK, you think someone had a word maybe with Rob and said, help us out at the end here, maybe?
Maybe Rob had a word with himself, but that's a much more helpful piece of radio transmission than earlier on, in my view.
I don't see it like that, Martin. I'm sorry, I think it's magnanimous. In other words, you were asked to do something, you know you didn't want to agree to it, and you are magnanimous by being a good team player, as David says, and you You stood up for the brand, and the brand is Ferrari. You were coshed over the head today. Make no mistake about it. I know it. You know it. That's what Rob Smedley is saying. And that magnanimous, to me, is a different understanding to the way you hear it.
Well, he was magnanimous, wasn't he, in Brazil when Lewis won the title? And he does do the right thing.
He's a completely professional sportsman. You know, his career when he came with Sauber, he was wild. You know, he had to set it out for a year as test driver at Ferrari, got his chance, and I think year on year, up until the point where he obviously had that very scary accident in Budapest, he's just got better and better. He's got great speed. I think Martin said it maybe either on air or in our conversations off air, that he is a thoroughly nice person.
Andrew Benson's just reminding me, who writes obviously with the BBC website, that Massa handed Raikkonen the win, and that decided the world title in 2007. No one complained then. Good point.
It's a different time of the year. Martin, there are many races are left. You cannot mix apples and pears. They're different.
When's the cut-off point then?
Well, I don't know that, but it's not for me to decide, nor you or anyone else. The fact is the people were robbed of a titanic battle today. That's my point.
I'm not sure they were robbed of a Titanic battle, because there's always going to be rules between discussions between the teams that, you know, as Christian Horner has said after Istanbul, you know, the first rule is you don't crash in your teammate. I'm sure you've delivered that. I don't think we were looking at a Prost Senna type situation where they would drive each other off the track to win. I think Alonso would have had a go, but he knows he needs to finish the race as well. So
it's interesting. A lot of people are actually saying, what happens to all the people that have put money on Massa to win the Grand Prix? What would have happened to all the people that had money on not Damon Hill to win in Spa in '98? Yeah, OK, it didn't affect the title. At the time it was allowed, but it still is interference, outside interference.
Well, we had this, Jake, sorry, we had this in Melbourne '98, so even before Eddie's situation, people were saying, we bet on you to win the race. But it's a bit like having buyer's remorse or walking out of the casino, ruining the fact that, you know,
when you want your money back when you've lost it.
Yeah, exactly. You've got to understand the rules of the game.
And buyer beware.
Absolutely, absolutely. And the rules of this game are, it is a team sport and team decisions get made.
But you're happy with what happened in Spa because the rules are now different, which is why you seem so
I would have been able to say, honestly,
you did the same thing.
I absolutely made the decision that was in the best interest of the team because the rules allowed us.
To do it. Okay.
The problem is the rules have changed, and of course it doesn't allow it.
Okay, let's hear from Stefano Domenicali, who is just one motorhome along in the Ferrari motorhome. This is what he's been telling the media.